The real estate agent's email arrived at 3 o'clock a.m. Mrs. Thompson, there seems to be some confusion. Your husband claims you've agreed to sell the house, but we need your signature to proceed with the closing. I stared at my phone in the darkness of our kitchen. Our beautiful kitchen with its hand-painted tiles and herb garden window that I designed myself. James thought I was asleep upstairs, unaware of his late-night scheming, but I've been tracking his betrayal for months. My name is Catherine Thompson, and my husband of 15 years was about to learn a painful lesson about underestimating me. The signs started appearing 6 months ago, small things at first. James working later than usual, mysterious charges on our credit card, hushed phone calls that ended abruptly when I entered the room. Then came the changes in his behavior. The man who once bragged about my cooking suddenly found fault with every meal. My choice of clothes became frumpy, my interests boring. I might have blamed it on a midlife crisis if I hadn't found the receipt. A $122,000 charge at Cartier, dated 3 days after he told me we needed to tighten our belts and cancel our anniversary trip. The receipt was for a bracelet, definitely not for me. That discovery led me down a rabbit hole of investigation. Bank statements showing large cash withdrawals, hotel charges in cities where he supposedly had business meetings, and most recently, emails to real estate agents about selling our home, all from his private account that he didn't know I could access. Katie? James's voice floated down from upstairs. You coming back to bed? Just getting some water, I called back, keeping my voice steady. Be right up. I closed my laptop quietly, my mind racing. This house wasn't just any property, it was my dream home. The one I'd spent 3 years renovating while working as an interior designer. Every room reflected my vision, my creativity, and now James was trying to sell it from under me to fund his affair with a woman young enough to be our daughter. But what he didn't know was that I'd been 2 steps ahead of him for months. The next morning, I watched James leave for work, briefcase in hand, kissing me goodbye like nothing was wrong. As soon as his car disappeared around the corner, I called my lawyer, Rachel. He's making his move, I said as soon as she answered. Got an email from the real estate agent last night. Perfect, Rachel replied, and I could hear her shuffling papers. Everything's in place on our end. Are you sure you want to wait? I thought about the evidence I'd gathered, screenshots of his messages to his girlfriend Amanda, a 23-year-old yoga instructor, records of the money he'd been siphoning from our accounts, the fake business trips that were actually romantic getaways. But timing was everything. No, I said firmly, let him think he's winning. I want to see his face when he realizes what's really happening. After hanging up, I walked through our house, running my hand along the walls I'd carefully painted, remembering the countless hours spent making each room perfect. James had laughed at my attention to detail back then, calling me obsessive. Now I understood he'd never appreciated any of it. My phone buzzed with a text from my best friend Diana. Just saw James at that new bistro downtown. He's not alone. I asked her to send a photo, even though I knew what I'd see. Sure enough, there he was, sitting across from Amanda, her bleach blonde hair catching the sunlight as she laughed at something he'd said. The Cartier bracelet glinted on her wrist. Thanks, I texted back. Keep me posted. That evening, James came home later than usual, reeking of expensive perfume and wine. He didn't notice how I'd rearranged my home office, moving my important documents to a secure location. He was too busy checking his phone, probably messaging Amanda. Busy day? I asked, serving the dinner I prepared, his favorite pot roast with roasted potatoes. Yeah, big client meeting, he muttered, barely looking up. Listen, Katie, we need to talk about the house. I kept my expression neutral, waiting. I've been thinking, he continued, pushing his food around his plate. Maybe it's time for a change. This place is too big for us, and the market's good right now. You want to sell? I asked, making my voice small, uncertain, exactly what he expected from me. He launched into his rehearsed speech about downsizing, investing in new opportunities, finding something more practical. I listened, nodding at all the right moments while my mind raced ahead to what would happen next. I actually talked to a few agents, he admitted, watching my reaction carefully, just to get an idea of the market. I forced tears into my eyes, a trick I'd learned in my college theater days. But this is our home. We've put so much work into it. He reached across the table, patting my hand condescendingly. Sometimes we have to make hard decisions, honey. Trust me. I sobbed, rushing from the table like the emotional, irrational wife he thought I was. Once in our bedroom, I pulled out my phone and texted Rachel. He's making his pitch now. Time to move to phase 2. The next week passed in a blur of activity, all carefully hidden from James. While he thought I was at my design clients' homes, I was actually meeting with financial advisors, documenting his betrayal, and setting up my own security net. Diana kept me updated on James's movements, lunch dates with Amanda, visits to high-end jewelry stores, a suspicious appointment at a luxury car dealership. He was spending money like water, probably promising Amanda the world. Then came the email I'd been waiting for. James had found a buyer for our house, a cash offer well above market value. He forwarded me the details with a note. "This is a great opportunity, honey. We need to move fast." I showed the email to Rachel, who smiled grimly. "He really thinks he'll just sign everything over without checking the details. He's never thought I was capable of understanding complex financial matters." I replied, thinking of all the times he dismissed my questions about our investments. That's about to change. That night, James was particularly attentive, bringing home my favorite wine and suggesting we eat on the patio. I knew what was coming: the hard sell, the manipulation, the carefully crafted arguments designed to make me agree to sell our home. "The buyers need an answer by Friday," he said, refilling my wine glass. "They're offering cash, Katie. We'd be foolish to pass this up." I took a sip of wine, studying his face in the fading light. The face I'd woken up to for 15 years now looked different to me, harder, colder, with lies etched into every smile. "You're right," I said softly. "We would be foolish." His eyes lit up with triumph, not noticing the steel beneath my words. "I'll have the papers drawn up tomorrow. We just need your signature and—" "No," I cut him off, my voice firm. "We would be foolish to pass up this opportunity to expose exactly what you've been doing." The color drained from his face. "What are you talking about?" I pulled out my phone, pulling up the folder of evidence I'd labeled James's secret life. "Should we start with the Cartier bracelet you bought Amanda? Or maybe the hotel receipts? Oh, I know. Let's talk about the money you've been moving to your private account, thinking I wouldn't notice." He stood up so quickly his chair toppled backward. "You've been spying on me?" "No, James, I've been protecting myself. Did you really think I'd just stand by while you sold our home to fund your midlife crisis?" The next few hours were chaos. James alternated between rage and pleading, threats and promises, but I stood firm, knowing I held all the cards. When he finally stormed out at midnight, slamming the door behind him, I sent one final text to Rachel. "He knows. Time for the endgame." The next morning, I woke up to 37 missed calls from James and a string of increasingly desperate texts. "You're making a huge mistake. We can talk about this. Don't do anything stupid, Katie. The buyers won't wait forever." I smiled, making my morning coffee in the kitchen I'd fought so hard to design. James had always underestimated me, treating me like a decorative housewife whose only skill was making things look pretty. He'd forgotten that successful interior design required more than just an eye for color. It required business acumen, attention to detail, and most importantly, the ability to read people. My phone rang again, James's number. This time I answered. "The buyer pulled out," he said without preamble. "Thanks to your little tantrum, we just lost the best offer we'll ever get." "No, James," I replied calmly. "You lost the best thing you ever had. The house was just the last straw." He started to respond, but I cut him off. "Check your email." I listened to his sharp intake of breath as he opened the message from my lawyer, the one detailing every transaction he'd made with our joint funds over the past year, every hotel booking, every gift to Amanda, and most importantly, the legal documentation showing that I'd secured an injunction preventing any sale of our house without explicit court approval. "You can't do this," he sputtered. "I already have." "Oh, and James, Amanda called me this morning." The silence on the other end was deafening. "She was quite surprised to learn you're still married. Apparently, you told her we'd been divorced for 2 years, and that's why you couldn't introduce her to any of your friends or family." This was the moment I'd been waiting for, when James realized just how thoroughly I'd dismantled his plans. What he didn't know was that I'd met with Amanda myself 2 days ago, showing her proof of James's lies and manipulations. "She's young, James, but she's not stupid," I continued. "When I showed her the records of how you've been spending our retirement savings on her, She was horrified. Did you really think she'd want to be part of destroying someone's life? The sound of something shattering came through the phone. James's legendary temper making an appearance. You've ruined everything, he shouted. No, you did that yourself. I just made sure I wouldn't go down with you. After hanging up, I walked through our house, my house now, touching the walls, the furniture, all the pieces of our life together that James had been willing to sacrifice for his midlife fantasy. Diana came over that afternoon, bringing wine and sympathy. How are you holding up? I poured us each a glass, settling into my favorite window seat. Better than I expected. You know what the funny thing is? A year ago, this would have destroyed me. What changed? I thought about it, remembering the moment I found that cardio receipt. I realized I was worth more than what James thought of me. The moment I stopped trying to save our marriage and started protecting myself, everything became clear. My phone buzzed, an email from Rachel with an update on the divorce proceedings. James' attempts to hide assets had backfired spectacularly, triggering a forensic audit of all his accounts. The judge was not amused by his financial manipulations. Ms. Thompson, Rachel wrote, given the evidence of financial misconduct, we're in a strong position to secure not just the house, but a significant portion of all marital assets. Would you like to proceed? I typed back a simple yes. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of legal proceedings and revelations. James's carefully constructed world unraveled piece by piece. His company launched an investigation into his expense accounts, finding years of questionable charges. Amanda, hurt and angry at his deception, provided her own evidence of his lies. Through it all, I maintained my design business, even landing a major contract to renovate a historic hotel. The client had specifically requested me after seeing our house featured in a design magazine, the same house James had tried to sell behind my back. One evening, as I reviewed renovation plans in my home office, the doorbell rang. It was James, looking disheveled and defeated. Can we talk? He asked, his voice rough. I let him in, noticing how he took in the changes I'd made to the house. The new art on the walls, the rearranged furniture, all traces of his presence erased. I messed up, Katie, he said, sinking into a chair. Amanda's gone. The company suspended me pending their investigation, and my lawyer says I'll be lucky if I don't face criminal charges for the financial stuff. What did you expect, James? That you could steal our future and I just accept it? He ran his hands through his graying hair. I don't know what I thought, that I deserved more. That you'd be lost without me. I laughed, genuinely amused. That was always your problem. You saw me as an accessory to your life, not a partner. You never understood that I was building my own success while you were busy destroying yours. The final divorce settlement came through 3 months later. I kept the house, my business, and most of our assets. James's financial misconduct had cost him dearly, both in the settlement and in his career. Amanda, to her credit, had turned her life around. She'd returned the bracelet and other gifts, using the money to start her own yoga studio. She even hired me to design the space. I'm sorry, she'd said during our first design meeting. I never meant to hurt anyone. I really thought you were divorced. We both learned some hard lessons, I replied. The important thing is what we do afterward. A year after that night in the kitchen when I'd received the real estate agent's email, I stood in my garden hosting a celebration. My design business had expanded, adding 3 new designers and a commercial division. The historic hotel renovation had won awards, leading to more high-profile projects. Diana raised her glass in a toast to new beginnings. As my friends and colleagues cheered, I looked around at the home I'd fought to keep, the business I'd built, and the life I'd reclaimed. My phone buzzed. A text from James's sister. He's living in a small apartment now, working an entry-level job. Keeps saying he should have appreciated what he had. I didn't respond. James' regrets weren't my concern anymore, and instead, I turned to my guests, raising my own glass. To knowing your worth, I said, and never letting anyone make you forget it. Later that night, after everyone had left, I sat in my garden, listening to the fountain I'd installed where James's prize grill used to be. The stars were bright above, the air fragrant with jasmine I'd planted last spring. My phone lit up with an email, another client requesting a consultation. Life moved forward, bringing new opportunities, new challenges, new chances to prove what I was capable of. James had thought selling our house would fund his new life, Instead, his betrayal had freed me to create something better than I'd ever imagined. Sometimes losing what you thought you needed makes room for everything you deserve. I touched the warm stones of the house. My house, feeling the strength of its foundation beneath my fingers. Like me, it had weathered storms and emerged stronger. Every room told a story now, not of what was lost, but of what was gained when I finally stood up for myself. The next morning, I had 3 client meetings, 2 project reviews, and a consultation with a potential investor interested in expanding my business nationally. James' attempts to diminish me had only proven how much I could accomplish on my own. As I got ready for my day, I caught my reflection in the mirror, a woman who had turned betrayal into triumph, pain into power. The house he tried to sell had become the symbol of my independence, and a life he tried to destroy had transformed into something far greater than his limited vision could have imagined. After all, the best revenge isn't just success. It's succeeding in ways your betrayer never thought possible.